Hey guys, welcome back to Destination Truth. Pardon the bad hair day, but today, like this morning, I got a message from a little bird that told me to research CIA training of Antifa forces in Syria. And I didn't know anything about this. I thought, Antifa is a domestic terrorist group in America that is trying to help overthrow the government. They are the useful idiots that the communists have always used to help them overthrow governments worldwide. It's happened in every country that they've taken over in. They've always been able to brainwash a certain number of people to help them do things. Brown shirts, Viet Cong, you name it. All right, so I'm gonna go down this rabbit hole, and I'm spending like my whole Saturday basically researching this now because I've already hit several bombshells. So there's a lot of evidence here. Don't go away. This is going to be a long-winded video, but I think you need to hear this soon because it means a lot for everyone who's a peace-loving citizen in the United States, someone who wants to protect the Constitution and their democracy. Anyone who loves America, you need to hear this now because it tells you a lot. And I'll just say that for now, but you need to stay tuned and watch this all the way through. Let's get into it.
You ever get the feeling that everything in America is completely fucked up?
Hi everyone. All right, so let's get into this. So in order to really understand what's going on with Antifa working in Syria to get military training to basically fight America and to basically fight America and then come back here with their military training to possibly fight America more, which is the main point of this video, it's important to go back and to get a little bit more of a holistic view of what's really going on in Syria and the Middle East right now. Syria is obviously a hot war for international foreign affairs between most of the most powerful countries in the world, except for maybe China, who's stayed mostly out of this, who's acting a lot like the United States used to act, which is basically maintaining a do not get involved policy. So that's probably a wise decision on them if they're trying to become global leaders. Anyways, that's a different topic. So to talk about what's happening in Syria and the Middle East, we have to go back to Operation Timber Sycamore. Timber Sycamore was an operation that's passed into effect with the CIA through Barack Obama and his cabinet. And basically what it does is create a lot of funds, like funding and giving of munitions and supplies to rebel forces. Now, what you'll never see in these types of short Wikipedia articles are the really juicy details, which are that some of these rebel forces are terrorist organizations like ISIS, like PKK. And this particular article does not name names so much, but it does name some very interesting things, such as what got this thing passed. And although on my channel I'll never get into details regarding Israeli, and I'm using that word instead of another word, involvement in foreign policy because it's very dangerous to do so. I've already been blacklisted for covering other things like the reality of 9/11, yada yada. But as we can see here, the creation of the Operation Timber Sycamore was while David Petraeus, who was a good man who resigned after less than a year in his position because, well, just over a year, he resigned because he was a good guy, and the CIA is deeply corrupt and it's an arm of the deep state. So, first, basically, they provided arms and covert training to rebels. And this was done in part because of lobbying by Jordan and Israel. Okay? So what's most important to learn from here is simply that this was to fund terrorist organizations and to create a bunch of basically power vacuums and to start the destabilization of Syria because the military-industrial complex has wanted to see the overthrow of Bashar al-Assad, president of Syria, for a long time. And that's what all of this is. And keep in mind, if Hillary Clinton was in office, the United States would have ground forces in Syria fighting basically Bashar al-Assad. Basically, that's what we really wanted. So we've been helping the terrorists and the terrorist organizations, because America is the deep state is very, very evil right now. And keep in mind, if you have any doubts of what I'm saying, let's just read this one section here. Secretary Hillary Clinton reported that the Saudi donors were a major support of the Sunni militant forces globally, and some American officials worried that rebels being supported had ties to Al-Qaeda. Okay, so they on Wikipedia, they're always going to have this as nicely worded as possible to not tell you the truth entirely. But basically, Operation Timber Sycamore is what gave all of the munitions to terrorist organizations in the more immediate Middle Eastern battles. Not with Russia. That's going farther back. So this is the new stuff, basically, that has started under Obama. Okay, so now that we know that Israel wanted this because they did not like they don't like their neighbors, that's for sure, and they don't like Islam. So they wanted to find another way to get the United States to help get Islam to kill Islamics, like kill their own people, basically. Okay, so now going on. All right, guys, so here's one of many great articles I was able to find. And keep in mind, guys, if I'm reporting on something, I have done my research. I have cross-referenced this thing with so many things that I know whatever I'm saying basically is a fact at this point. So let's get into it. All right, so I'm just going to read some excerpts from this Lexicon of Food news outlet, basically. Bombshell, Antifa receiving military training in Syria. And by the way, this thing goes way back. I thought that this was new news because of some information I was able to find quite recently. Let's see, is it this? The original source that got me onto this was basically my buddy talking to me, but we'll get into all the juicy details in a minute here. I'm just going to go through the best details of each of these things to help you guys understand what I'm talking about. But basically, here's a bombshell. Antifa receiving training in Syria, and American and European Antifa members are being attracted to the U.S.-backed Kurdish People's Protection Units, YPG, due to their anarcho-communist politics, who are in turn persuading Antifa extremists to fight alongside them in the Rojava Revolution, which is a communist revolution. Okay. And obviously the scary thing here is Antifa members are civilians. They're not part of any military. So them being able to fly around the world and kill people and then come back and not have to go to trial on any of this, it's deeply concerning. It's not orthodox. It's not normal. And I personally am I'm reporting on this because it's the CIA is funding these types of organizations, guys. The CIA is. So it's our own country fighting itself. Instead of just summarizing, I'm just going to read a little bit of this because it's going to tie into other pieces that I'm going to read. So I'm going to try to cut this down. But basically, an uproar occurred once the U.S. Special Forces in Syria attached YPG insignia to their arms, and the U.S. military was accused of supporting terrorism, to which the Pentagon admitted wrongdoing and said it was a false use of the insignia and it was unauthorized, basically. As a result, the U.S. military was forced to rebrand YPG as Syrian Democratic Forces. This is what happens every single time, guys. Every time the CIA, the military, ever gets caught doing something bad, they do something called rebranding, where they just change the name. So it's hard to track things, basically, because once it's been rebranded to a different name, then the history of that organization has to be reestablished. So until they do evil shit, they can't be blamed for doing evil shit. So that's why they do it and why it works. Weapons and military training that the U.S. military had provided them with are in turn being provided to Western members of Antifa. These members of Antifa, along with the Kurds, have been constantly glorified in the mainstream media. Rolling Stones magazines interviewed several Western leftists that are fighting the YPG. The fact that these anarcho-communist militias have women who are fighting ISIS is something that is oft repeated, but that's not true entirely, and we're going to get into that. They're not fighting ISIS. They're actually fighting the legitimate Syrian government as well as Turkey, basically. Antifa groups in Europe and North America have posted photos of their fighters holding up Kurdish YPG flags along with the Antifa flag in Syria. And I'm going to show you some of that stuff now. Basically, the rest of this article is fantastic and pretty short, actually. So I encourage you to read that. Moving on, this is a piece of evidence I found from TRK, which is actually a Turkish public broadcast service. But I'm going to show it to you anyway because it basically debunks some things about YPK and PKK and YPG. This is really short, don't worry, it's 1 minute. That is true. I had to verify that on my own. That Turkey is not doing a genocide on Kurds. That's not true. Daesh is still in power. It still exists. Yep. So this is all coming out recently, guys. As you can see the date here, because Turkey basically made a 30-kilometer safe zone so that they could resettle Syrian refugees back into Syria. Ethnically cleansing Arab towns. So what? I'm just going to stop it there. So YPG is a terrorist organization. It's been labeled a terrorist organization because it works under and is supported by the YPK, or the PKK. Sorry, I'm terrible with acronyms. And the PKK has been designated a terrorist organization by the United States, United Nations, EU, and Turkey itself. Alright, that's it, guys. Alright, moving on. Alright, so here I want to talk about how the mainstream media is mostly glamorizing what these guys are doing and actually probably in a weird way helping the CIA recruit more people, members of Antifa, to join the YPG, PKK, and get involved. So you can tell these are legitimate Antifa members. This is, like a neckbeard individual here, and they're all wearing YPK badges right there on their fatigues. So this is real. So, the untold story of Syria's Antifa platoon, a ragtag crew of leftists, revolutionaries, and soldiers of fortune helped defeat ISIS. So, in reality, this is not true. They did not help defeat ISIS. They weren't even fighting ISIS, most likely. I'm sure they could have been, but from all the other sources I've found, they were in fact providing support for groups like ISIS and Daesh. So, let's go down a little bit so I can show you something pretty surprising. Just want to show you how communist this YPK group is. A capitalist society is a shit society, he said. And they're talking about this. They're glamorizing this guy, Karim Franceschi. He's like Italian. Just as Egyptian society with the pyramids and pharaohs was a shit society, which you know nothing about. We don't actually know how that society was, but we know it's built on the backs of slave labor, so that is pretty shitty. But anyways, that's a huge generalization. We're fighting, what we're fighting for in Rojava is a socialist alternative. So they're fighting for communism, and if you still have your doubts, I advise you to read this whole article, but let's go ahead and read this. The YPG are loyal to an imprisoned guerrilla leader named Abdullah Öcalan, a former Marxist who is now espousing the synthesis of anarchism, feminism, and ecology. So I'm just going to stop it there and move on. But basically, these are Antifa forces, guys. These are guys who are going to come back to the United States. They have passports, and they're going to be leading Antifa forces, which are the useful idiots that every communist revolution has always had. There's always, Lenin's spoken about them, and sorry, this is a long article, and I'm hardly using any of it, but basically it mostly kind of glamorizes the movement and how, ragtag groups are helping and working hard to fight ISIS and yada yada, and in reality, the PKK is a terrorist organization. It is not legitimate, and I'm going to show you another clip now from a leader within Turkey. He's quite articulate and seems to know what he's talking about. and I think he's telling the truth, most importantly. Because after reading all of this, the YPG, PKK are terrorist organizations, and they're basically fighting the sovereign nation of Syria and Turkey, and helping terrorist organizations try to create a what they say is a Kurdish caliphate or a Kurdish nation sovereign state, but in reality they're trying to establish a small communist government there, I think is what they're trying to do. Though a lot of these useful idiots don't know that. So let's go ahead and get into that clip next. This is a 16-minute interview, so I'm not going to play all of it, but let's go ahead and get into it. It's more like a 12-minute interview, but...
Well, I'm joined now by President Erdogan's special advisor and spokesman, Ibrahim Kulen, from the capital, Ankara. Thank you so much for being with us here on BBC World News. Bring us up to date.
Well, we had a phone call last night about the safe zone, and we discussed our aims and the All
right, the safe zone is that 30-kilometer safe zone that I mentioned earlier. And I'm going to fast forward this part just to get to the juicy parts of this interview, because there are some parts that I think are really more interesting. But not to mention, this post is fantastic by Sky Blue on Twitter. Turkey is not fighting against the Kurds, but against the PKK, who are terrorist communists armed by Obama and the CIA, who I mentioned earlier, and trained by them too, by the way. PKK is it was designated a terrorist organization by all these organizations I already mentioned. Okay. So now we're going to fast forward to a more interesting part here.
Integrity and political unity. Turkey has no intention in occupying any part of Syria. When we fought against Daesh 2 years ago in the Jarablus area, we entered that area. We eliminated more than 3,000 Daesh fighters there. And when we finished the operation, we returned that part of Syria back to local residents. It's been run by the local Syrians themselves. We did the same in Afrin last year. We cleared that area from PKK, PYD, YPG terrorists and returned the Afrin area back to the local people again. As you know, we are also present in Idlib as part of the Astana process, where we are securing the Idlib area. We have about 12 military posts there, and we are making sure that about 3 million people that are right now in the Idlib area remain safe. At the same time, we fight against any terrorist elements.
Can I ask you for more detail on you say that it's very important. Can I just ask, you say it's very important to eliminate Daesh, the self-styled Islamic State. You're referring to the battle, the fight that's been had. Now, I just want to remind you of what Nikki Haley in the US has been saying. Obviously, key in the administration formally, she said the Kurds were instrumental in our successful fight against ISIS in Syria. Leaving them to die is a big mistake.
All right, so before I let him respond to this, I just want to say that, you know, this is the mainstream media, BBC News, trying to now flip this on Turkey for helping defeat these terrorist cells, because they are, in secret, pro PKK, because we made the PKK. And this is part of the deep state, guys. It's all this crazy puzzle that most people just cannot see it. It's a matrix. It's a literal matrix. And until you can see it, you have no idea what's going on. You just have no idea. You're lost to it. And that's why I made this channel, is to try to help people be able to decipher what's happening in front of them and be able to understand what's really going on in the world. So now he's going to be able to articulate that he is not actually going to be killing Kurds as he's being accused of right now. And the left is doing that in other articles, which I'm not going to go into to save time. But basically, they're just fighting terrorists that are trying to overthrow the people that already live there, who, for the most part, do actually just want to become part of Syria again. They don't want to have their own country. The Kurds are a small minority, and Kurds, the word Kurd is actually basically a word to describe Iraqi nomads that were just herding animals. Okay? Little details that might be useful.
It is clear, isn't it, that Kurdish fighters were instrumental in the fight against IS, which you have just highlighted as being of such importance.
Well, we have no problem with the Kurds, whether in Syria, in Turkey, in Iraq, or other parts of the Middle East. We are fighting against a terrorist network. The fact that PYD, YPG has become a primary force against Daesh in Syria is due to the fact that the Obama administration decided to support them with immense military equipment, ammunition,
straight from the horse's mouth,
training, money, and political support. If they had decided to work with another group, legitimate group in Syria, like the Syrian Arab Free Syrian Army, Syrian National Council, Turkoman, and many others in Syria, they will have been the most effective force against Daesh. You cannot fight one terrorist organization with another one. Everybody knows that PYD, YPG is PKK in Syria, and PKK is listed as a terrorist organization in Europe, in the United States, and other parts of the world. The PKK's ultimate goal in Syria is to create a state of their own. And we cannot let that happen vis-a-vis Syria's territorial integrity, but also since it's a terrorist organization that's been fighting against us for the last 35 years, we cannot let PKK or any other terrorist network to have some kind of a state structure right at our border. Our fight is against the terrorists, not against the Kurds. There are thousands of Kurds in Syria who do not subscribe to PYD's, YPG's Marxist-Leninist ideology. It's really an irony of history.
So can I just get some clarity on what you're saying for our viewers here? Just, are you talking about potentially an all-out assault on the YPG?
Okay, so I just have to interrupt, make sure you understand that as soon as he mentioned communist ideologies, she interrupted. And they started fading out his voice to like a third of what it should have been, so that he couldn't keep talking about the fact that these are Marxists and Leninists trying to create a communist state in the Middle East, which doesn't currently exist. The Middle East is mostly dominated by warlords and some democratic republics, but mostly monarchs, warlords. That's basically it. And she interrupts him.
You have distinguished between Kurds in general and Kurdish forces that you regard as terrorist. So are you signaling that an all-out assault on the YPG is something you will see as a necessary part of this incursion?
Well, what we have communicated to the Americans, to Europeans, and others is that we will establish this safe zone by our own means. We do not foresee or want to have any confrontation with anybody there, so they better pull out of this area. And that's exactly what President Trump decided after the phone call with our president last Sunday. And that is the case at the moment. I just had a phone call with the National Security Advisor, Robert O'Brien, and we went over this again. Our record is very clear on this. When we entered Jarablus and Afrin, we've taken extreme care in terms of making sure that no civilians are attacked, no civilian infrastructures are affected. And you can go and look back at our record there and compare to what happened in Raqqa, compared to what happened in Mosul or in Aleppo, you know, by different countries, by different operations. Our record is very clear. We've been very, very careful about this, and we will do so. In regards to the Kurds versus PYD...
All right, that's pretty much all we need from this clip, but it's very powerful and impactful. And basically, you know, if I had it my way, then the Antifa troops that are there would stay with the YPK and get wiped out by Turkey, because that would be in our best interest, basically. All right, so let's move on to another source here. And I'm just going to basically collaborate some of what's being said here. This is a picture from a video that I'll play just a tiny part of for you right now. Here's the clip. This is CIA propaganda, by the way. They're recruiting. Just the way they film this.
The revolution in Rojava is under attack. Like the Paris Commune, and at so many other points in history, the revolutionary forces face the leviathan of capitalist hegemony, which has come to devour the New World and enslave us all once again.
When were we enslaved under capitalism, exactly?
The revolution must be defended. Therefore, we announce the creation of the International Revolutionary People's Guerrilla Forces to defend the revolution in Rojava.
This is, trust me, this is how they recruit. All of their videos, depending on what language they're speaking, they're trying to recruit young men, because this stuff, for some reason, works on, I would say, low IQ people. I don't know. It's not advancing the cause of anarchism, it's for communism.
Anti-fascist, anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist, and against all forms of patriarchy and kyriarchy.
Patriarchy. This is...
We announce our membership in the International Freedom Battalion and declare our support and alliance with the YPG, the YPG, the PKK, the Anti-Fascist International Tabor, and the International Freedom Battalion's member organizations. We declare our open struggle with all imperialist, fascist, and counter-revolutionary forces. Victory to the revolution in Rojava. Victory to the barricades, the social insurrection, and the commune. Militant, horizontal, self-organized collectives and communities for the revolution and anarchism.
So every time you hear the word anarchism, you need to understand they really mean communism. They're not talking about real anarchism. They don't want to get rid of a state. They want to bring a communist state, basically. Okay. All right, so as you can see, this is a terrorist organization that is communist. It's a communist organization as well, trying to spread Marxism in the Middle East. All right, so here is an interview that basically was the interview that got me onto this story. So I want to share just part of this as well. It's very short. Let's get into it.
New details emerge about Antifa's ties to the Kurdish militia in northern Syria, and One America's Jack Posobiec explains from Washington.
Here speaking on One American News once again with Brad Johnson, former CIA officer and the president of Americans for Intelligence Reform. Brad, thank you so much for sitting down with us again.
Jack, it's always great to see you. Thank you for having me.
Everyone in Washington is talking about President Trump's decision to essentially remove American forces from northern Syria, where they had been sort of aligned along the border between Turkey and what's considered the Kurdish-held areas there. Now it looks like Turkey is making an incursion. What's going on? How did all of this get started in Syria?
This is actually a leftover mess, if you will, from the previous administration under Obama. They went in and...
All right, so I've already nailed this really deeply. So you guys understand that this is basically the fallout still from Obama's massive funding of terrorist organizations, including ISIS and PKK and thus the YPG. Okay, so Mother Jones is a left-leaning news source, and this guy Shane Bauer has been reporting on this. And again, they're trying to say, you know, it's Trump's fault that he's going to let Kurds die, basically. And yeah, so this is a bunch of propaganda. They're saying it's Kurdish people and YPK are not terrorists, except for one example, basically. They're trying to romanticize this Rojava revolution and basically recruit for them, which is deeply, deeply concerning. Okay, here's another good article from Mother Jones as well, which is a little bit more unbiased, I think. I'm not going to get into this. It's not important. What is really important, guys, is, you know, we've got Brad Jones from the CIA reporting on this. He's done 2 interviews at least, not a lot, but not a lot of people know about what's going on here. And the concern is this, guys. Here's the giant bombshell that I want to talk to you guys about. The scary thing that's more important than all of these individual news sources, here it is. I'm making myself front and center for you guys so you guys can focus on this. So, the CIA and the deep state have allowed members of Antifa, not a lot, but many of them, to go get actual military training because they realized that basically the left is organized. They have many ways of communicating, and they have hierarchies of power, and they have many economies of scale for funding anything they want to do, basically. The right has still predominant control over only the NSA and the military. And I don't know if there's certain branches of the military that are compromised, because I've heard people talking and telling me that the government doesn't have as much control over the military as we think we do, and the deep state has corrupted many generals. And so that brought me to research a little bit as to how important and why during Soviet communism and Chinese communism, it was important to denote that with the rise of communism, some of the people that have the most to gain and win are military generals. Because military generals are not, you know, 6, 7, 8, 9-figure income individuals usually. They're patriots, but they're paid usually, I would assume, maybe 6 figures top, somewhere in the 6-figure range. But they're not paid super, super well. Under communism, though, they become part of the ruling class. They get extreme power, and they're elevated to a status that they don't normally get. And so to corrupt military generals is actually very easy under communism, because those people get all the power. The people that are willing to kill. Just look at all of the communist leaders throughout all of world history. Literally all of them were militant. All of them. Especially people like Stalin, Mao, you name it. I don't have to get into all of them. Okay, so my concern is, because there's certain branches of the U.S. military currently that are loyal to the country, that have sworn to uphold the Constitution and the country, they're now trying to go a different route. And they're like, okay, well, we need some more well-trained people ourselves. And so what I believe is happening, Antifa is become radicalized and desensitized and trained in military combat. And so what they're going to do is bring these people back home, and they're going to radicalize them just the way they did Stephen Paddock, because I believe Stephen Paddock may have actually been part of Antifa. We know it's been reported on many times, but I keep hearing that there actually was. I thought it was propaganda spread by InfoWars, Alex Jones, but I think there actually was some Antifa literature in Stephen Paddock's suite. So Stephen Paddock was the Las Vegas shooter, by the way. And so he might have been radicalized. But the point being is, that is an example of what they want to happen. So they're training these Antifa forces to become a powder keg, which is a explosion, a violent explosion or event that will ignite a war. This is what they want. They want powder kegs. You'll be going off left and right. If you watch my video that I uploaded recently, the interview with Yuri Bezmenov, the ex-KGB agent, there's 4 stages of overthrowing governance with communist revolutions, and we are still in stage 3, not 4 yet. Stage 3 is the crisis stage. They need to put us in a state of crisis. So they need to create real or fabricated crises nonstop. They want more shootings, more bombings, more chaos. They want all of that. They want all of that, because that kind of chaos creates opportunities for them. Okay? So that's the end game result, and this is what I say, guys. Okay, so if you've watched this long, thank you for watching. I hope you like this kind of content. It's kind of like, I've cross-verified with both liberal and right-leaning sources. There's a bunch of other stuff you guys can check out, by the way. Great articles by all kinds of sources that I've skimmed through, but basically they all corroborate the same stuff. So you already know what you need to know, basically, to make an educated decision on this. And this is what I've come to as a conclusion. The left is very organized, actually. They may not have a lot of civilians in the United States that are armed, which they're scared of. They understand that they have a big weakness there because they're anti-gun, and they're trying to get rid of our guns. The conservatives, the patriots, the people who love this country, the God-fearing folk, the Christians, all of us. And all of us are being forced to unite. If you aren't Christian but you're a patriot, for example, you're uniting with the Christians, okay? And so what I see being needed right now is organization. And I have been planning for a long time, and I think this is very dangerous of me to say this on YouTube or in general, but basically I am trying to build my own community. I'm trying to build a platform that will help people communicate and share ideas and more. I hope to help people organize events, rallies, etc. And I'll leave it there. And if you want to join this community, what I'm doing is I want there to be some ways to keep the wrong people out. So I've got a paywall on my Patreon account. And on my Patreon account, I have a link to a platform which will allow us to communicate discreetly and privately and safely. And so basically what I'm doing on there is I'm going to be holding a chat session once a week. Right now it's Thursday nights. What time and such I'm not going to mention here, but I'm writing a new article on my Patreon page so that you can read that and you can get in there and we can talk. And that's all it is for now. We're just talking. So nothing sinister, scary, but it's important to communicate with like-minded people and talk about things that you can do to actually make a difference in the world, because right now our country is literally got, to show you again, we've got communists like this guy who's unfortunately a type 3 or 4 communist, which means he's basically an idiot. And he's probably gone to college in the United States, very left-leaning colleges, which have brainwashed him. And he doesn't actually know what he's doing out there. He just knows that he's doing something that he thinks is good, basically. That's what he's doing in his head. He's fighting for good. So we're going to be up against these guys, and they're going to be creating proxy wars, and they're going to ignite a real war. And I've said it before, guys, but we are in a civil war right now. It may be cold, but we're in a civil war right now. This culture war, or whatever people are calling it, it is a war. And when I see things like this, it helps me understand that this will not end well. There's going to be violence. There's going to be bloodshed. And you have to pick a side, and you have to plan to win, because at the end of the day, that's what it's going to come down to, guys. It's going to come down to that. So if you're conservative, if you're a God-fearing person, someone that loves America, make America great again type individual, someone that's pro-Trump, yada yada, you need to own a firearm. You need to own one, because this whole thing is going to be going off probably during Trump's second run in office, or after, immediately after, because as soon as they get a communist in power, of which almost every Democratic candidate for president right now is espousing a lot of far, far, far left socialist and or even communist ideologies. So we don't really have an option right now. It's literally like save America with Trump, and Trump's not perfect, by the way. There's certain things I disagree with him on, because I think he's far too pro-Israel, yada yada. But America or communism? Those are your choices. Make your choice, and take your time to choose wisely, because there are no go-backs. And if we fall to communism, it will lead to at least 100 to perhaps several hundred years of darkness. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.